Hello my friends, my name is Carrie. Welcome to the video. I can't tell you how excited I am for this video. I live and breathe dark academia. I think that it's perhaps I was raised with a lot of like boarding school stories. Yeah, so many of the books that I was raised with tended to be school related, and just something about that atmosphere. It's nostalgic, but it's exciting. I love school. I'm the kind of person that wakes up every day and is like, should I go to grad school? I love being a student. I hope to never stop being a student in some way, shape, or form. I love a mystery. I love eerie, creepy things, and dark academia tends to incorporate that in some way, at least in the way that I think about it. I have 3 books that fall under the category of dark academia coming out this month. We are talking about September. It's my husband's birthday. It's one of my best friend's birthdays. It's a good month, all right? Bringing me a lot of good stuff, including these 3 books that we're going to read over the course of 2 weeks, I think, as I frantically wind down, get ready for my big trip to Slovenia. Very exciting. So this will kind of be like a distraction because I do get quite nervous before a big trip, before a flight. So you will see joy, but you will also see a bit of like crazy behind my eyes, you know? So really excited to dive in. The reason we're starting today is because I finally got the first book we're going to read out from the library. The holds list was long. This was a battle, okay? But she finally came in. My apparently supply and demand. This is why, like, honestly, guys, if you want to support authors that you love, even if you go and physically buy that book, go put that book on hold at the library. It shows that there is a demand for it, especially if it is a new release or it is a release that is literally about to drop. You can put those, especially on Libby, if you use that, you can put that on hold, or you can like request to be notified when it is purchased. So the library will see that there's a lot of interest in it. And in the case of our first book, it purchased eventually 7 extra copies. My library has 8 copies of it, which is amazing for a debut. So I'm going to finally look into the Goodreads. I have a very, very vague idea of what this is about. So let me move my microphone and we're gonna do a dramatic reading, shall we? Full disclaimer, I just looked. The author has a pronunciation guide on her TikTok. So I've been butchering names left and right, trying to do my due diligence. Okay, we are reading Immortal Dark by Tigist Girma. Google search says Immortal Dark, the highly anticipated black vampire romantasy of 2024! Exclamation point. Also, the like special editions, the covers, so good. Okay, so usually I am not heavily swayed when a book is compared to another book in a blurb, like, oh, for fans of ACOTAR. I usually don't feel those vibes that much, so I don't put a lot of weight into it, but the 2 that they picked to compare this to, I'm interested. It only came out 6 days ago, so within this week, but it already has 719 ratings. It's sitting at a 4.07. Here we go. Immortal Dark. The Cruel Prince meets Ninth House. Say less. In this dangerously romantic dark academia fantasy where a lost heiress must infiltrate an arcane society and live with the vampire she suspects killed her family and kidnapped her sister. It began long before my time, but something has always hunted our family. Orphaned heiress Kidan Adane grew up far from the arcane society she was born into, where human bloodlines gain power through vampire companionship. When her sister, June, disappears, Kidan is convinced a vampire stole her. The very vampire bound to their family, the cruel yet captivating Susenyo Sagad. To find June, Kidan must infiltrate the elite... Oh, she pronounced it. Hold on.
This book takes place in is called Yuxley University.
Yuxley. Okay. Kidan must infiltrate the elite Yuxley University, where students study to ensure peaceful coexistence between humans and vampires and inherit their family legacies. Kidon must survive living with Susenyos, even as he does everything he can to drive her away. It doesn't matter that Susenyos' wickedness speaks to Kidon's own violent nature and tempts her to surrender to a life of darkness. She must find her sister and kill Susenyos at all costs. We know how that goes. When a murder mirroring June's disappearance shakes Yuxley, Kidon sinks further into the ruthless underworld of vampires, risking her very soul. There, she discovers a century-old threat, and June could be at the center of it. To save her sister, Kidon must bring Yuxley to its knees and either break free from the horror of her own actions or embrace the dark entanglements of love and the blood it requires. Oh no. Nope, I can't look. I just scrolled down and looked at reviews. No, we're not doing that. I'm gonna dive in. I just got a text. My husband wants to get milk tea with me, so I'm gonna go get milk tea and then I'm gonna come back and read this. I am very excited. So, Immortal Dark. In we go. We begin with a content warning. Immortal Dark explores the savage world of vampires and the humans who try to survive it. It features some heavy elements such as parental abuse, blood drinking, death, gore, murder, sexual content, strong language, suicide ideation, and violence. Readers, please take note before you grab your invitation. The gates of Yuxley University are now open. Oh my god. I may need to get a physical of this simply for the map. Oh, the university. I'm a sucker for a good map. And this one's quite small, so I'll have to look it up. Oh yeah, there's all these different houses. There's a monastery, there's towers, there's libraries. I'm gonna have to look at that closer at some point. We have a prologue, and I'm only going to read you the first sentence because I often get carried away and I read a lot more. So only the first sentence of the prologue. Prologue. Visible through the candlelit window of Yuxley University, a campus as ancient as the creatures it housed, the dean and her vampire sat in private conversation. Okay, all I'm gonna say is this. There is like a family legacy being called in, which we remember. It was told in the summary she is an heiress, right? But apparently the one known trait of this family is that the women are stubborn as hell. Stubbornness was a plague. I love a stubborn protagonist. In I go. This is gonna be my last check-in for a bit because I don't wanna, this is gonna be a non-spoilery vlog unless I put like a actual spoiler section because I want you to read these, okay? So I'm only on page 6. I'm on like the 3rd page of the first chapter. In the prologue, it is mentioned that Kidon is being charged with murder as of 24 hours ago. And I thought like, oh my God, it's gonna be a misunderstanding. She's gonna have to prove her innocence, blah, blah, blah. No, Kidon is like, yeah, I taped my confession to the underside of my bed. Her trial date is set for 8 months from now, where she plans to be dead. Her confession would be taped to the underside of her bed, and the violent workings of her mind unveiled for all. Okay. On I go. I promise I'm done with my check-ins, but she's being like, her house is surrounded by paparazzi, and it's like, yeah, why is it that when it's a witch hunt or when we're like crucifying or vilifying someone, we go hard, but when there's a victim, not so much. Also, these chapter headings are just gorgeous. Ugh. Okay, a 10% check-in. So without any spoilers, basically what the setup is that our main girl is the heir to her family's house. There are like a certain number of houses that vampires are allowed to feed off of. Like there's a whole history behind it. they can't just drink any old human's blood, okay? They can only drink from these 8 houses traditionally. And she is the heir to one of them. And at first she's like, screw this, I'm running away. Like, I'm not dealing with any vampires. I don't want to be anywhere near a vampire, please. I just want my sister back. But in the will that she is given, where her like inheritance is mapped out, it's basically either she goes to this university, graduates, and then becomes the rightful leader of her house, because you can't gain full access to your house unless you have graduated. You need to take like human vampire coexistence classes, which I think is actually quite funny, but great. So it's either go to the university, live in your house where the vampires obviously live in your house with your family's vampires for however long it takes to graduate school. Or number 2, her parents and grandparents apparently in the will wrote that like if nobody else is there to take the throne, if you will, the head of the house, give everything to our main vampire. And Kidon is like, no, we're not giving anything to the person who I suspect is the one who kidnapped my sister. No. And the only way that he can fully claim head of house, because he can't like graduate from the university, he needs to stay in the home for 28 days in solitude, so by himself. So if she's in the house, he can never start his like 28-day in solitude thing. Basically, it's a loophole. So she is like, as much as I don't want to be anywhere near this freaking parasite, I'm going to move into my house. It's mine. And I'm going to go to the university and I'm going to find my sister. So that's where we are. We are now entering the university. Okay, checking in quite a few hours later. It is nighttime. I just have to say, I just started watching The Haunting of Hill House on Netflix, and there is a locked room in this like clearly freaking haunted house, okay? And they're just like taking their sweet time trying to find a key, even though the kids are like, we see shadows. There's someone like in the room. Someone is walking around. This girl is like, wants to get into a room in the house and she doesn't have a key. So she just finds an axe and opens the door. And I love that for her. Love that for her. A really quick 28% check-in before I go to sleep. I'm on chapter 20. I'm eating this up. Not only is there like not a sentient house, but like a house with power and a house with a kind of haunting. It has a personality. I think it's a little bit sentient. I just talked about how much I love sentient houses. There's also like, we have created a study group. That's one thing I really love. And I kind of critique about books that claim to be dark academia. I love the academic pieces of it that aren't just the setting. I don't care if they're running around a school. I want to see them. I want to know what they're learning. I want to see what they're studying. And so we have like actual scenes of philosophy class and they're discussing this particular kind of philosophy. They have tests, they have study groups. It's just, I'm really enjoying it. I love the world building of all the different houses, the conflicting families. If I wasn't so tired, I would be continuing it, but I'm actively falling asleep. So I will catch up with you when we next start reading. Okay, good night. Quick check-in from the forest. I had about an hour and a half bus ride to get here, so I was reading, and guys, I'm on 35%, I think. It's just, it's going where I think a lot of adult, like, enemies to lovers kind of things, like, don't go. It's quite gruesome. There's one particular scene, I don't want to spoil it, but it involves pliers. And it was like gruesome. And I was sitting on the bus, like toes and fingers clenched. Just like describing the campus, describing the building. It's dark, and I think it goes there. I feel like I've read a lot of books recently that are like, we're trying to be dark, but really we're just trying to be like moody. Like, ooh, I'm gonna hold a sword to your throat, but I'm not ever actually gonna do anything. these two do things, and I think it's refreshing and cool, and I'm loving it. So, and once again, they're still continuing with like history building. We just watched a play. I mean, the way that she world builds is so clever. It doesn't feel like it's world building. It feels like it's really just a part of the plot. So seamless. So I'm so excited. Like, I almost didn't want the bus ride to end. I was happy when we got stuck in traffic, but I'm gonna get a coffee and read a little bit more. Get out of the heat. Okay, real quick, 75% update. I'm breezing through this. It's getting so messy. Like, I know that at the end of the day, we're looking for her sister, right? But there is just so much going on, which is a good and a bad thing. I think my only issue right now is that in terms of like actually picturing the world, it feels very small in my head. I don't know how to explain that. Like the house, I can picture 2 rooms, but I can't really picture the whole house. Like I feel a little claustrophobic. That's totally just a me thing, but like that is quite interesting. Whenever they are somewhere, I can only picture like the table that they're sitting at. I can't picture anything else around them. Weirdly, it's, yeah, just a weird thing for me. So visually, I'm having a little bit of a hard time with it. These characters are also just super impulsive. Like I'll talk about it a little bit probably at the end, but just like both of them, Susenyos and Kiran, come up with these ideas that are so self-destructive or potentially just like destructive of like their future plans, right? And they're just like, I don't care, let me kill this person who probably has a lot of information, or like let me consume this poison and we'll see what happens. Like I'm just like, guys, yeah, for the past probably like 5 to 10% of this book, I've been just like a little confused. Like it's getting messy. And again, like the scenes, each chapter is like one quick scene. I don't know, it's just a lot going on. So I had like no notes for the first 50% of the book. Now I'm seeing how she's going to make it a trilogy because there's just so much. I continue. Okay, like just for example, talking about there's so much going on in this like last 40% of the book. They're talking about the long-awaited youth art exhibition. Who's been waiting other than Yusef? Like, I just keep forgetting about certain things. Like, there are times when I kind of forget about her sister, even though that's like the main thing that we're doing. I don't know. So yeah, I'm still like totally along for the ride. It's just the ride is starting to get a little too convoluted without enough kind of answers. Like, hold on, let me turn you around. I'm not explaining it the best way, but I feel like every time we're given a new clue, it doesn't feel like we also receive like a little bit of an answer. It's sort of like A leads us to B, leads us to C, but like we still don't fully understand A, you know? So it's just becoming a long list of things that we still need to figure out. I get it, this is gonna be a trilogy, but as in terms of like me reading it right now, I'm a little bit like, it's feeling a little unfocused. That's my check-in point. All right. Ooh, I've been sneezing a lot recently, so if I suddenly pause and I'm like, I feel it right here, real quick before anything leaks out of my mind. Sorry if that felt like a really quick turnaround where I was like 50% obsessed and then 75%. What the heck? I ended up reading, I didn't film, but I read well into the night and then a little bit this morning to get to that 75% point, and it got confused. Like there were so many twists and betrayals and all of this stuff that like it's not that I couldn't sink into it. It was more like I understood the kind of theme and idea, like the whole idea of you are not the worst thing you've ever done. Like you aren't defined by the worst thing you've ever done. And usually people have a reason to be the way that they are. How self-love and self-acceptance is like a terrifying, difficult, horrible thing. I get that, and I get that like so many actions happened in order to just like further teach our main character this lesson, like the fact that she needs to accept herself, but it just made everything feel like okay, this isn't a super spoiler, but like there are a lot of a lot of deaths in this. There's a lot of murder, okay? A lot of people die. And because it happened so often, it sort of felt like no big deal. I don't know. It almost, not that it felt comical, but it was just like the answer to everyone's problem is to just like kill. I already wasn't like totally jiving with the decisions that our main characters make, but I sort of thought that like very similar. I know that this was compared in the beginning, how it like is similar to Ninth House and The Cruel Prince, which I kind of don't agree with now, but I do see, like, for example, Jude in The Cruel Prince, if you don't know, is like kind of a violent girl. She's hellbent on revenge, she's bloody, she's, you know, and so I was like very open to like a character that I don't agree with, maybe I don't understand her, but like I'm willing to get to, you know, follow her through this. But when every character in the book is like that, I couldn't grasp a single character that was like, okay, at least we see eye to eye, you know? I don't know how to explain it. Again, with the house, so the whole magic system, as it was explained, is kind of cool. So every house, every family, there's 80 families, every house has a law. So in the beginning, the dean of the university is explaining this to her, and she momentarily made the law of her house that no one can put down their teacup. So Kidon drinks a little bit of tea and she can't put it down. So it could be something silly, but like normally it's something bigger, and I thought that was a really cool thing. But it's sort of then not explained super well. I don't know how to... I kind of expected more from it, and it ended up just being a kind of confusing element. Like I said, I just think there were a bunch of things thrown in, and we didn't get answers to any of those things. So I think it will be a really interesting, I think the second book, there are so many loose ends that I feel like the second book is going to be really exciting and even better than the first one. I think the first one, like I said, the first 50%, really cool ideas, really great setting. I loved her writing style. But then I felt like pretty much at the 50 to 60% mark, that just kind of went away. Like, I don't know, it felt like there was a little bit of a dip in the writing style in order to up the action. The action ended up just being a little confusing and perhaps a little bit too much. Characters just kind of felt disposable. You know what? I take that back. What I said about not understanding a single character, I liked Taj. I liked Taj. Everyone else, I was like, all right, well, I guess we couldn't be friends, and that's okay. I'm happy to read about people I can't be friends with, but yeah, shout out to Taj. I'm so sorry about that. But yeah, I think the book just kind of left me confused, and that being said, I will continue it, because I do think that the second book is going to be even better than the first, but this definitely was a very weak second half, unfortunately, for me, but I have high hopes. Since putting the book down and filming this video, I went to Goodreads and looked at a couple other reviews because I find that other people are a lot better with words than me, and I read a few that I completely agree with that were basically saying that this will hit hard for some people. I think perhaps if you're more okay with like a vague, like you're reading it and you're very much like, what the fuck is happening, but I'm here for it, that it kind of reminded me of how I felt with vaguely, all right, this isn't a perfect example, but like how I felt with reading the Atlas 6, where I thought the concept was cool and I was kind of reading it because I was like, yeah, this is fun. And then at the end I was kind of like, what was going on. I didn't super enjoy it. So some people love the Atlas 6 and I get it, but it just didn't hit for me. So that is how I felt about Immortal Dark. Impeccable beginning, questionable middle, confusing end, but I have so much faith in the second one. I will absolutely be waiting with bated breath for that. All right. Next up, we actually have, let me check, when is that one coming out? Hold on. That's what I thought. The next two books I'm planning on reading, I hope I can read both of them before my trip. They're both coming out on September 17th. I leave on the 23rd. Pray for me. But we are going to be reading A Dark and Drowning Tide and An Academy for Liars. I can't wait. I think I'm going to read Academy first and finish off with A Dark and Drowning Tide, but we'll see which one hits my Kindle first. I pre-ordered them both. So I will see you on the other side. I'm actually technically, wait. Is this considered? Okay, I'm not going to be including it in the video because I don't think it's dark academia, but I am very excited what I'm going to be reading after this. The Woods All Black by Lee Mandello, who wrote Summer Sons, which was an experience. Not my favorite, but like I loved the writing. I just don't think the story was necessarily it was a lot of like, the only thing I remember is like, it was very sad and emotional. Like we're dealing with a possible suicide, right? Investigation kind of thing. So I remember it being heavy, but I also remember it was just a lot of like bros hanging out on the couch smoking weed. It's like, it just like didn't hit for me. My brain and that book were not on the same channel, I guess. But I cannot wait for this one. It's a short one. I think it's only 150 something pages. That's what I'm diving into later tonight. So I will catch you on September 17th, where I have a beautiful 2 new shiny books waiting for me. So thank you. Let me know if by this time you have read Immortal Dark. Let me know your thoughts, and see you later. And hello, we are back. It's been a minute. It's been a few days. It is September 17th, 3 p.m. Korean Standard Time. Both of the books have been deposited into my Kindle. I'm very excited about this. I'm going to start with, no promises if I'm going to be able to finish both books. I'm going to try my best, but I'm going to start with An Academy for Liars because I feel like that one is truly dark academia. Let's just dive in. According to Goodreads, we have 370 ratings. This book just came out, so all of these are going to be advanced reader or like hopeful ratings. I'm personally like not a fan of people who rate things beforehand, like they rate things 5 stars and then they're like planning to read. So hopefully most of these are legitimate people who have read it, and it's sitting exactly at 4 stars. When I checked earlier, it was a little bit higher at like 4.1. So as more reviews are coming in, it's settling, but here we go. All right. Whew. It's 464 pages. So like I said, am I going to get through this? I have 5 days and I have like things to do. So, all right. In bold, a student will find that the hardest lessons sometimes come outside the classroom. In this stunning dark academia novel from the acclaimed author of The Year of the Witching and House of Hunger. I believe I either read The Year of the Witching or I DNF'd A Year of the Witching. This was like when I first started BookTube. I read it. I have no memory of it except I think it was like culty. I don't remember. So I'm really going into this with no opinion towards this author. Lennon Carter's life is falling apart. Then she gets a mysterious phone call inviting her to take the entrance exam for Drayton College, a school of magic hidden in a secret pocket of Savannah. Ooh, we're going to Georgia. All right, this is great. Lennon has been chosen because, like everyone else at the school, she has the innate gift of persuasion, the ability to wield her will like a weapon, using it to control others, and in rare cases, matter itself. After passing the test, spoiler, Lennon begins to learn how to master her devastating and unsettling power. But despite persuasion's heavy toll on her body and mind, she's wholly captivated by her studies, and Drayton's lush, moss-draped campus, and by her brilliant classmates. But even more captivating is her charismatic advisor, Dante, who both intimidates and enthralls her. I don't want this to be a student advisor romance. All right. As Lennon continues in her studies, her control grows, and she starts to uncover more about the secret world she's entered into, including the disquieting history of Drayton College and the way her mentor's tragic and violent past intertwines with it. She's increasingly disturbed by what she learns, for it seems that the ultimate test is to embrace absolute power without succumbing to corruption. And it's a test she's terrified she's going to fail. Okay. Is this a series? It seems like it's a standalone, and I'm happy about that. Okay. I'm going to dive immediately. I'm going to dive immediately into it. I did open it just briefly to see how many pages it was on my Kindle, and this goes for all three of these books: Immortal Dark, and Dark and Drowning Tide, and Academy for Liars. They all have these like beautiful chapter illustrations. Thank you. Let's get back into that, okay? I love when Holly Black does it. It just sets the mood. Immortal Darks definitely like kept me understanding what the world kind of looked like, because again, I said I had a little bit of an issue visualizing the world. Just that little tiny illustration every time I reached a new chapter, I was like, oh yeah, Gothic architecture school. I got this. This one is a moth, and I believe A Dark and Drowning Tide, when I opened it, had a really cool like part 1. Yeah, we love the Gothic font. But okay, let me dive in. Let me read you the first part, shall we? If I look hot, I just got home. It's like 33 degrees outside right now, and I like ran home so that I could start this. Okay, chapter 1. There was something in the bathroom mirrors Lennon first noticed when she was standing between them, preparing for her own engagement party. One of the mirrors hung above the sink behind her, and the other above the sink in front of her. Standing between the two, she gazed with glassy eyes at the reflections of herself reflecting one another, on, shrinking into the dark and distant ether. Wait, she's getting married? Lennon is engaged. Okay. I understand. There's a taste of horror to this novel. It's listed as one of the genres. Yeah. The first couple of paragraphs definitely is like one of my tricks in the mirror, you know, in horror movies always freak me the hell out. And this, she just like illustrated a very creepy mirror scene within the first page. So I am so here for it. But yeah, Lennon's getting married and she's not happy about it. So we got to find out more. Welcome to book 2. Here we go. An Academy for Liars. Okay, I'm 5% in and I am appreciating the setup, but the writing style is a little too much for me. It's the style that kind of tells us every single action our character takes. So it feels just very like staccato. Like, for example, they're walking. Benedict gestured to the large oak desk. There were 2 chairs drawn up on either side. Benedict sat in one and Lennon sat in the other. And it was just like she got a phone call from a phone booth, and it was like she heard the phone ring. She opened the door to the phone booth. She walked in the phone booth. She picked up the phone. She heard static. Like it's very like every single move she makes, it is told to us instead of just like she entered the phone booth and picked up the phone. It's so detailed. And I think that in certain spaces that's okay. But currently it's just like, I can't not focus on that. I'm hoping that now, because she's been like in her head the whole time, we haven't even really spoken to anyone yet. I hope that now that there are like other characters she can interact with, it will be less of like, these are all of her actions. Like even she checked her phone and there were she had like missed calls and stuff. And it, with like parentheses, told us where every single, like, she had 7 missed calls, 3 from Wyatt and 4 from her mother, and 12 text messages, 1 from Wyatt, 5 from her mother, and 6 from her older sister, Carly. It's just like a lot of these details that I feel like maybe aren't necessary. I just feel like I've been reading so much and I'm only on page 17. So I'm hoping this changes once now we have characters coming in, but I will mention that there is like suicidal ideation happening and like talk about rehab and having to go to like facilities for mental crises. So that just wasn't, I don't think there weren't any like trigger warnings or anything in there, but that's like on the 10th page. So just so you know, I will continue. I'm only 5% in. Okay, like for example, this is just one paragraph that I feel like we could have maybe, I didn't need all of these details. And I think that I'm just being nitpicky now because it's been 26 pages of me noticing it, you know? But for example, the last chapter just ended with the man saying, go to the 8th floor for the rest of your exam. And she says, this is a 2-story house. And he says, yeah, I know. All right, so that's cool. But then we have, Lennon walked down the hall, the floorboards groaning beneath her sneakers, and approached the birdcage elevator. It was old and rickety with brass walls. She stepped into the cabin and dragged the collapsible door shut with a rattle. The buttons on the operating panel ranged from 1 to 11. She punched the 8 with her knuckle, and a second inner set of doors sliced shut behind the grate of the birdcage, and the elevator lurched into a shuddering ascent. So I get that, like, yes, the ambiance, like, we're talking about what it looks like, what it sounds like, all of this stuff. But, like, do I need to know that there are 11 floors? Do I need to know that you press the button with your knuckle and then a second set of doors closed? And it just was, like, it's just a lot for... I'm hoping for like something to actually be happening, you know? That's maybe the last I'm gonna mention it, but I'm just trying to illustrate what I'm talking about by this writing style that I'm not loving. But let's go see what the entrance exam is. No big update, 15%. I'm 8 chapters in. I'm gonna go out for dinner. So I'm gonna leave you here, but just so that I don't forget. Yeah, so far nothing has really pulled me in. I feel like the pacing is very bizarre. I feel very just like disconnected from it. I feel like I am reading each sentence. There has never been a moment where I'm just like watching the book unfold, you know? I'm very aware that I'm reading, which if you know me, that's like something that bothers me. So we'll see. Like, I have no grasp on who Lennon is as a character. I don't know. We'll see. I'll catch up with you soon, but hopefully once classes start, it'll improve. So I'm back after dinner, and I just have to point out that every single, specifically male character, I'm not sure about all of the female characters, but every guy in this has been described as scrawny and lanky and skinny and like skeletal, but also incredibly attractive and like so alluring, blah 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 blah. It's like, what? It's a little strange. Real quick before I head to sleep, I'm actually passing out. I am at 40%. I am now on chapter 23. The last time I checked in, I was on chapter 8, and I was saying that I was not loving it. I was at 26%. Things have changed. So since I think pretty much chapter 8 was where things really started to turn around. We start to learn more about Lennon's power. Now there's not a secret society, but like a secret feeling society. There's different houses, different dormitories, and one of them is very exclusive. So we have that. It's very dark and grungy. Like, there's a lot of drug use. There's a lot of like stabbing people. There's clearly something weird going on. Turns out one of the like persuasive powers that people have, you can persuade someone to like lose all of their memories. So because of one of Lennon's abilities, she's kind of dangerous, and some people would rather, instead of like training her to use her power correctly, they would rather just like erase her memories of this entire experience and just like send her home. So there's that. Like, if she doesn't learn to control herself, she's going to lose all of her memories, and that's not really great. So it definitely got a lot better. The choppiness has
ended. It's funny, there's a lot of elevators in this book. There's just like endless elevator talk. And so the one paragraph that I read to you earlier where I was like, we don't need to know about all these buttons, like we don't need to know that the door closed, you know, all of these weird details in that paragraph. There was another time where she got in an elevator and like mentioning the buttons made sense, and it was part of the world building, and like it was intentional and moved the story, like it added to the story. I think that in the beginning she just added a lot of details that didn't actually add anything to the story, and it didn't even really add much like ambiance or like even adding just to the scene setting. It was just kind of there. Now I feel like all of the details make sense. I feel like all the characters have been introduced, so I don't need to read about how scrawny and tall and skinny everyone is. But yeah, I still don't really understand Lennon as a character yet, but it's gotten so much better and I'm genuinely excited to continue reading. I'm at 40% and I am in bed, like my eyes are shutting without my consent. So I have to stop, but yeah, rough beginning, rough 8 chapters, I would say. Let's say 9 just to be safe. A rough 9 chapters, but it's turning around big time. So I will catch you tomorrow. Okay, hello. Kurt is cooking in the background. I am on page 329, 73% of the way through. It's also spicy, so if I'm coughing, the air is spicy, not the book. What do I have to say? So, as I mentioned, I feel like the story completely shifted. I don't know what was wrong with the first 8 chapters, but I feel like I'm reading a completely different book. I still don't get a lot of things about this world. Like, they're supposed to be at school and we really only hear about the like final exams and things like that. And each time they're sort of like, the way that these tests are described, it's sort of like a duel, but each time the duel is the same thing. It's like convince another person to pick up an object. And it's like, I feel like there could have been a lot more interesting things to do with persuasion. Currently, right now, we're learning a little bit more of like what's possible, but it just sort of feels like the magic is not as exciting as I want it to be. Like the concept is really cool, but then what we actually learn about it is very limited. There's also like not a huge sense of urgency. I feel like right now, and this is at 73%, right now I feel like maybe we're gonna get into the thick of it of like what is wrong with Drayton. I feel like so far the only issues have really been like a couple students have been jealous, and because of like the fact that they can use persuasion, like that makes their retaliation and their, you know, their jealousy dangerous. I get that, but in terms of like, is there an underlying mystery? What's going on? Like, there's one character that is kind of like clearly got a mystery going on. And then there's been this kind of earthquake that's happened twice, but always like very brushed off. But other than that, like the way that the book was described, right? There's like this underlying lurking conspiracy, mystery, whatever, having to do with the school. And it's like, I haven't really felt that yet. There's been a lot of death. There's been a lot of, like I said, stabbing, blood. Lennon gets a lot of nosebleeds, but even though I'm enjoying reading it, I haven't really felt like a, we gotta solve this mystery kind of thing. I don't know. So I've been eating it up, but in a way that like, I'm eating it up so that I get to the part that's really exciting. But so far, I mean, from like chapter 8 to now, it's been like a solid story. Just missing some things for me, but still excited to continue. I'm gonna go eat my kimchi bokkeumbap that Kurt is making me, and I'll catch you probably when I finish it. Honestly, I'm sorry that I'm not showing, like I know normally when I read I'm showing like examples or I'll zoom in on a quote or something like that. There isn't much of that, for better or for worse. I'm just reading straight through. So I'll see you later.
Okay, the book is done. I also took such a deep nap. Oh my god. It is the like Korean Thanksgiving weekend basically, so we have nothing to do except for eat a lot, and take a lot of naps. So that's what I'm doing. Okay, I finished the book. I realized that I didn't talk a lot about it, show you a lot of examples, tell you a lot of what was going on in the plot. This was like a confusing read for me because, like I said, the first 8 chapters, whatever that was, let's say like 20%, I don't know what that was, 17% maybe, so not great in any way. Then we started to get into it and it was interesting, but that's it for me. It was interesting and I felt like it was missing something. And it wasn't until we hit the 75, more like the 80% mark, that I realized we were missing stakes. I realized, like I mentioned before, that there were a couple characters that were competitive and that competition ended up being pretty violent, and so there was like danger and there were secrets and there was like the vague threat of, we could always just erase your memory, bleh, you know, like expel you. Okay. I felt like it didn't, the school and her experience at the school and whatever she was going to get out of the school didn't feel like a life or death situation. Like at the end of the day, she could have just left. And I understand that like she kept telling us like she wants to matter, she wants to, you know, do something important, she wants to be special is her thing, but I didn't really feel it that much. Even her like expressing her powers, I didn't feel like she had a real sense of wonder about it. Like I just didn't feel, why is this such a huge deal, that like the only issue maybe is that she could get expelled. I don't know if the teachers made it seem like she could also be like killed. I don't think they ever actually made that threat, but they definitely were like, we're just gonna erase your memories of the, at the time, like just a couple of months that she was at this school, that they made the first threat of like, we don't like your power, we're gonna expel you, kind of thing. That just didn't matter to me. I didn't really get it. So like I said, from chapter 8 to 80% of the book, let me see what chapter 8 was, hold on, 15. Okay, so from 15 to 80%, it was like interesting, but not, there weren't any stakes, right? I didn't really get what was going on. 80% to the end, the last 20% was chef's kiss. So good. But like, and the reason I realized there weren't stakes in the rest of the book is because at 80% is kind of where the stakes get introduced, I guess. Because here's the thing, like the school is secret. It's like in its own pocket of time and space. So like the average person can't just like stumble upon the campus, which I think is really cool. But it also, like, what if real people could see it? Like, I guess that there, you know, obviously that would be an issue of like, wow, there are people who can like do magic and mind control and like weird stuff. But like, it wasn't described in a way that I felt like that was also a really urgent, important thing we need to be thinking about. So really it was that last 80% that was just, like I said, chef's kiss great. So it was just very interesting that even though I left the book loving my last bit of an experience with it, it was like I really pushed through the first 15%, and then I was like, why am I reading it for the next 60%? And then it delivered. So I would still say read it, but it definitely was like lacking some things. I also just saw, literally as I just went back to check on chapter 8, in the acknowledgements, the author does mention that her mother passed away during the time that she was writing this book. So I wonder if perhaps that affected the writing in any way. There were some parts that were just so strong, and like I was at the edge of my seat even though I was laying in bed, and like my heart was just racing and it was exciting, and I was in it. I feel like the last 20% was the first time I really I saw the campus, I saw the characters. It was just so much going on. It almost felt like the beginning of the book was not the same author. It was very fascinating. But so yeah, I get it when people, because I've seen a few reviews of people I trust online saying like, no notes, loved this book, and I get it, but I do have some notes. I would still definitely recommend it. I felt not as academia as I wanted it to be. We actually just kind of had a lot of time jumps, and it like skipped over her actual classes. Like I mentioned, we got like a couple final exams she had to take, and she was kind of very secluded, I think, from like the rest of the school. So maybe that's why, but like didn't feel quite as academia as I wanted it to be, but it definitely was dark. Yeah, that was a wild ride. I'm so glad that I stuck with it. I don't know if I had like gotten that from the library and had to push through those first 8 chapters and then kind of continued with a meh, all right, middle. I don't know. That could have been a DNF for me. So I'm glad that I did a video on it, and forced myself to continue. An Academy for Liars, that was a wild ride. I think I talked less about the book just because I didn't know what to say while I was reading it, until just now. So now, I might start it, let me move my mic. I might read this later tonight. We're gonna start A Dark and Drowning Tide. I think I have enough time to finish all 3 of these. It's very exciting. Okay, so according to Goodreads, A Dark and Drowning Tide by Alison Saft. All right, how can I do this? I have a bone to pick with Alison because her previous book, her most recent work, was published under St. Martin's Press / Wednesday Books, which I was and still am boycotting. It's kind of a little messy, but specifically at the time that came out and I read it, there was the St. Martin's Press boycott, so I wasn't promoting it, so I couldn't talk about it, and it was really bad. It was really, really bad. What was that? So I'm really worried about this book. That's why I saved it for last. There's a feather floating outside my window. Okay, that's creepy. All right. I'm worried about this one, but the cover seems great. This is not published. This is published by Del Rey. Here we go. Let me just read it to you, okay? 1,323 ratings at a 3.91. All right? Here we go. A sharp-tongued folklorist must pair up with her academic rival to solve their mentor's murder. In this lush and enthralling sapphic fantasy romance from the New York Times bestselling author of Far Wilder Magic, Lorelei Caskell, a folklorist with a quick temper and an even quicker wit, is on an expedition with 6 eccentric nobles in search of a fabled spring. The magical spring promises untold power, which the king wants to harness to secure his reign of the embattled country Brunestad. Lorelei is determined to use this opportunity to prove herself and make her wildest, most impossible dream come... Okay, that's a mistake. To make her wildest and most impossible dream come to become... Okay, missing a word. Goodreads. Come on. I'm assuming it means the most impossible dream come true, to become a naturalist, able to travel freely to lands she's only ever read about. The expedition gets off to a harrowing start when its leader, Lorelei's beloved mentor, is murdered in her quarters aboard their ship. The suspects are her 5 remaining expedition mates. I love like a locked room murder, you know? When there's like only 5 people in the room. Had to be one of them. Love. Okay, this is looking good. The suspects are her 5 remaining expedition mates, each with their own motive. The only person Lorelei knows must be innocent is her longtime academic rival, the insufferably gallant and maddeningly beautiful Sylvia von Wolf, with 2 F's. Now in charge of the expedition, Lorelei must find the spring before the murderer strikes again, and a coup begins in earnest. But there are other dangers lurking in the forests that rearrange themselves at night. Rivers with slumbering dragons waiting beneath the water, and shape-shifting beasts out for blood. As Lorelei and Sylvia grudgingly work together to uncover the truth and resist their growing feelings for each other, they discovered that their professor had secrets of her own. Secrets that make Lorelei question whether justice is worth pursuing, or if this kingdom is worth saving at all. 384 pages. We'll see. We'll see. Like I said, I'm probably going to start that a little bit later tonight. But yeah, An Academy for Liars. What an interesting read that was. I so loved the ending. I feel like I've been reading a lot of books that have had great concepts and a great solid start, and then not awesome ending, this one was flipped. And I don't know how I feel. I don't know how to feel. But I would still say give it a go. Definitely adult, definitely talks a lot about abuse. There's a lot of drugs. There's a lot of talk of suicide and self-harm. So like go in knowing all of that. What an experience that was. So I will see you tomorrow, if not tonight, for our final Dark Academia of September, A Dark and Drowning Tide.
Okay, hi everyone, checking in real fast because I actually need to run to meet up with my friends. We're gonna get cinnamon rolls. It's wonderful. Always find yourself a group of friends who will be delusional with you and pretend that it's autumn when it is like still 32 degrees outside. That's what we're doing today. We're having like our little autumnal morning cinnamon roll date. Anyway, I wasn't sure how much I was gonna read last night because I had like just poured through An Academy for Liars. I am on 21%. I read 5 chapters. I'm on chapter 6. I am loving this. I want to know, where was Alison Saft in her previous book? Like, it doesn't feel like the same writer. I love this setup. There was so much world building, but like cleverly done because of the characters that are introduced, because of the stuff that they're going to have to do. Like, they're traveling through the country, right? We immediately learn about the different countries. We're like conveniently shown a map of where they're going to be kind of adventuring, and we get told like literally the lay of the land. Within, again, I've read 75 pages. I have a complete grasp of like the political atmosphere. We have a very young king who is friends with all of these people except for our main girl Lorelai, who are on this expedition. There's like history there. They've got like literally a childhood full of drama. These are all like elite trained politicians. I mean, it's really cool. And I think that she's doing something that she did really well in A Far Wilder Magic. She talks about discrimination based on religion. In A Far Wilder Magic, I believe that the two main characters, one was very obviously Jewish and one was almost very obviously Catholic, and I think she's doing exactly the same thing in this. Lorelai is clearly from a Jewish background. The way that she talks about her people, the Yeva, it's very similar to how Jewish people have been treated for centuries. And then there's Sylvia, who is also from a kingdom that is very religious. It doesn't seem like it's fully like a Catholic vibe, but there's definitely, she has like a necklace full of saints that she never takes off, you know? So both of them are already in some way outsiders, even though Sylvia is like technically next in line for the throne. Basically, she's like the #1 most likely to take over if something goes wrong with the king, you know? So even though she's incredibly high ranked, she is still like, the people of her kingdom are still discriminated against because of their religious views. I love when Alison Saft does this. Keep doing this. So far, so good. Again, I'm only 75 pages in. It is a significantly shorter book. I think it's like almost 100 pages shorter than both of the other books that I've read. But so far, the imagery, it's all about rivers. Like, magic comes from the water, or so they think. And all of these different rivers coming through the kingdom have different things that they can do. It's just, I thought, opening scene, I was there. I saw it so clearly. And it's moving quite quickly. Like, already now, we are now at the murder, and it's about a kingdom that has just recently unified, aka absorbed the surrounding kingdoms, right? There's also that layer to it as well of like, yes, we're all technically united under this one flag, but like a lot of us are not happy about this. Most of us aren't. So there's just like a lot of interesting layers, and I felt like I immediately got it. Yeah, I have like an hour bus ride ahead of me before I get my cinnamon rolls, and then an hour back. So I'm gonna devour this. I'm also packing for my trip. It's finally happening. The packing has begun, so I might come home and pack as well. But yeah, so far so good. I kind of left this one to the end because this is the one that I was the most worried about. I'm really hoping it's not a situation of like a really strong start and it's gonna flop. Hopefully not. But yeah, I need to head out and get coffee and cinnamon buns. And continue reading. Also, the banter between like Sylvia and Lorelai, the banter isn't so great, but like Lorelai as a character I think is so wonderful. Like, she's so grumpy and walled off and just like so tired because she's like, I work so hard. And oh, that was the one thing. Her job, I said, is she's a folklorist. And what does that mean? So they're trying to find, as I said in the thingy, this is not a spoiler, they're trying to find this magical spring that is apparently where the magic comes from, right? And so her job as a folklorist is she has spent years interviewing people from all over the kingdom and like all different generations to ask them to tell her the story that they know, the fairy tale of this spring. And then she collects all those stories, looks for all of the similarities, and constructs what could be the truth. And I think that's so cool. Like, I love when people dive into fairy tales and folk tales and try to find like, okay, but where did this spring from? Like, the kernel of truth, where is it? And it's so cool. I also have the very first, or the fourth page, excuse me, not the first page, but when we're first getting introduced to Sylvia, Lorelai, they're late for a meeting, and Sylvia is just like always kind of in a world of her own. And so she's trying, Lorelai is like running around frantically trying to find Sylvia. We see her for the first time, and as she's described, she has like this luscious white hair, right? And it says, in Lorelai's weaker moments, she imagined that grabbing a hold of it would feel like plunging her hands into cold water. And I just like the imagery of like everything is just kind of like water and darkness and cold and eerie and I'm so into it. So see you soon. I'm coming at you from a horrible, no good, very bad day. I'm leaving on my trip in a couple days. I'm also making tea if you hear stuff, but I need to return something. I need to send a package, and I only have today, Friday, or Monday right before my flight to do it. And it turns out that like, oh no, somebody's moving out on such a rainy day. It's also pouring. And someone's moving out of their apartment in the rain. That sucks. So I'm not the only one having a bad day. So basically, I can speak Korean. I've lived here long enough. I'm comfortable speaking Korean, but there are certain places that like, if I don't go there often and I don't use those words often, I get very nervous. Like even in the US, I get nervous going to the post office, right? Because I so rarely send stuff through the post office. Anyway, so I was already nervous going, and then they took my package and then they called me back to be like, oops, we made a mistake. We can't send your package. And it's just like this, I'm returning a camera and it has a lithium battery, and they're basically like, there is no way to send it. I was like, can I send it by boat? And they're like, no. Oh my God, it was just, I was literally in the post office for 2 hours, and I don't know how, because I'm not gonna go into it. So I'm just like really upset. So while I was waiting, I also had to go to the bank. So I had to sit in the waiting room for a really long time. And while I was in the waiting room, I read a little bit more. We finally got some kind of action. Okay, a little bit of a love confession. And I feel like, and this might have been because of the mental state I was in, which was like not great, but I feel like the author, you know, when you can just feel that like, oh, this was a scene she wanted to write, like separate from the story. It was like, oh, this was a scene that was living in her head for a while. So like as a scene, it was good, but it kind of felt a little like, where did it come from in terms of how the story went? Like she just kind of wrote certain things to happen to get us to this scene, which was just like a little bit annoying. And it made it feel like one character in particular, like the way that she reacts doesn't feel like we hadn't seen that from her yet. And so it felt a little strange, but I'm still into it. We've just gotten to like the reveal of like what's all going on. So I'm excited to finish it, but yeah, just today was like not my day. I'm gonna finish this book. I'm gonna drink a cup of tea, calm down. But this is just in case I suddenly am like a hater towards this book. A lot of times reading has to do with like what's going on around you, and it's really stressful. So yeah. I'm gonna, like I said, I'm gonna go get a tea. I've got like 100-something pages left. Let's finish this baby.
It is done. I am done. What a day. So I'm sorry, I like fell asleep. When I get stressed, I like play with my hair. So the more poofy my hair looks, the more stressed I am. Okay. I finished the book. So I don't remember when I last checked in with you, but I know that I got to about 60% yesterday after I had my cinnamon buns and all that stuff. I read until about 60-something%, and I basically had no notes. Like, it was still really fun. I was totally on board. Then starting today, it was again still fine, but it felt like it was dragging a little bit. And then we got to the actual romance part, and this is today. To be fair, I got to the romantic scene in the middle of the bank waiting room, the lobby of a bank. So I was like not in the mood. But what I said still stands. It felt a little bit like she had this scene that she needed, that she wanted to be the first kiss scene, and it felt like it was kind of dropped in a weird point. And then I actually think like continuously the romantic scenes were like she envisioned them and dropped them in kind of strange points. Like they didn't feel quite as natural. There also were points, strangely, when I couldn't tell who was talking, which is weird because in the beginning, Sylvia is a very just like, the word that she uses a lot is like wonder. She just thinks the world is such a magical, interesting place, and she's really optimistic. And then Lorelai is very just like dry, pessimistic kind of gal. But near the middle, and like when they were arguing with each other, they would sound the same. And sometimes I wouldn't be able to tell who was talking, which was odd. Overall, the ending wasn't fabulous. I do think that the setup, like again, that first 60% was so good. And then we started to try and wrap it up and also try to have this romance blossom, and also try to have, of course, like we need to have a couple crises and betrayals, and they can't be together and blah, 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 blah. And it was just a lot to fit into 40% when I feel like it suffered a little bit. So I will say this wasn't a perfect book. I'm not sure how I feel about what ends up happening to the kingdoms. The whole reason that like all of these royals, all of these friends, they're all friends, but they're also all kind of enemies. Like they're all likely to sabotage the king because all of their homelands have been colonized. And I don't know if I like what the kind of end game is, like what they settle for at the end when it comes to, you know, a large kingdom that has swallowed up your kingdom and is threatening your culture and way of life. So I'm not super on board with the ending at all. But I'm glad that I read it. I also, again, the like dark academia part really kind of fell by the wayside. Their jobs suddenly became like, let's just run through the forest. Like it wasn't, we had a botanist who in the beginning was like collecting samples. And then we had I don't even know what she was, let's call her an engineer, but then her machine broke. And then she's just like, well, guess I can't do anything on this mission. And like, you know, so all of their like interesting little roles disappeared. Now we're just like frantically running through the woods for the last half. So yeah, not perfect, but I'm so pleased that she turned it around from her previous book. It really feels like I feel like a Far Wilder Magic, she did a better job because it felt a little, like the world felt a little bit smaller. I think that this book, because it had like 5 or 6 or 7 kind of warring kingdoms or groups, her writing that kind of political intrigue and backstabbing and stuff like that was a lot, and that's what kind of made it messy and for me a little bit lackluster. But I'm just glad that she's like trying whatever formula she used for A Far Wilder Magic again, and throwing out whatever the heck she used in the last book. So yeah, I would say from all three of these books, they were all good, and I think they would hit hard for the right person, but they just kind of maybe missed just a little bit with me in all different ways. Isn't that interesting? I do think, like I said, they're not similar in concept, but in the way that I reacted to the book. I would say if you liked the Atlas 6, I feel like the Immortal Dark would probably appeal to you a lot, just in terms of like how a story unfolds, how a story is constructed. I think those are quite similar. For An Academy for Liars, I'm not sure. I can't think of a good comparison, but I think it would be better as a reread. And that ending was really good. Like, why was I crying on the last page? It was just kind of a bit of a confusing little slog to get there. And then for this one, it was so atmospheric and right up my alley in terms of like a fantasy that is so based on fairy tales and things like that. But it just got a little messy, and the romance didn't hit as much as I wanted it to. I think actually for all three of these, the romance didn't hit as much as I wanted it to, but all of them had a great ambiance to them. Yeah, I'm still happy that I read all of these. I would still, again, none of these are like bad. None of these are ones I wouldn't recommend. I just don't think they would be 5 stars for everyone. There you have it. Now I have to pack up my life. My whole package issue is not fixed. So that's a bridge I'm gonna cross. I have 1 more hour left of the post office being open. I've given up for today, and maybe I'll use the morning of Monday before I get on my flight to see what I can do. So I think also kind of the ending of the book was definitely affected by my current mental state, as I warned. But yeah, so let me know. All 3 of these are out, ready for you to get your hands on. So let me know if you've read these, what you think. Do you agree? Did I miss something? Should I go back and reread things? Yes. So there you have it. That was my Dark Academia September. And I'll catch you guys next time. I think next week I have to take another break because I tried my best, but with my other channel, like I can vlog every day. It doesn't matter. Like at the end of the day, I will always have content to film. But for this channel, I also need to read books, which takes a lot longer. So I just didn't have time to read anything new. Make a new video, that kind of thing. So I tried my best, but for my mental health, I'm not gonna push it. I will see when I get back. Okay, so thank you so much as always for joining me. Sorry that we fell apart at the end, kind of like all of these books. I will see you next time, okay? Thank you always. Bye.